Friends, it is April 17th, 2024. This is Marcus coming at you with some more thoughts. And the big point for the video is not, for this audio, is not what I'm going to say right up front, but it's something that God showed me about 2 months ago. And I immediately made a audio recording explaining what God showed me. And I had to do it quickly in the morning because I had to rush off to other stuff during the day. And I thought my video was too long and rambling. And then I put it on. And guess what? 2 months have gone by. And I just wanted to communicate this info that God shared with me. But first, I'm going to communicate some other things. And that info has to do with Ukraine. And so, and the sneak preview is... there are fallen angels under Ukraine. So that region, Ukraine, Romania, Transylvania, it's the general region where the Ashkenazi Jews rose up from. They were a group of people that didn't want to participate in the Roman Catholic system, and they didn't want to participate in the Eastern Orthodox system, and they chose to adopt the traditions of Judaism, not the God of the Hebrews, but the traditions of Judaism, as a political loophole, as a way to get out of being forced to either, they had Russia on one side of them, and like Germany and Austria and stuff on the other side of them, and they didn't want to be either. They wanted to be their own thing, didn't want to get consumed in either of those systems. Because also that would, if you chose one, if those Ashkenazi people chose one, then the other team, right, it's like either Republican or Democrat. It's either Roman Catholic or it's Russian Orthodox, right? Once you choose one side, then the other side, you become their enemy and they don't want to play with you. So to play both sides and to not alienate either side, they chose a loophole of the third option of adopting Jewish culture and traditions, but not the Torah of the Bible, not the Torah given to Moses. No, they adopted Judaism, the Babylonian Talmud, Kabbalah, and other things, and there was financial advantages, financial incentives. So that whole thing was political and had to do with money and power and politics. And they didn't want to go. These people who adopted Judaism, FYI, did not want to go to Israel either. They wanted Ukraine to make a space for them to live. And Ukraine said, hell no, you don't belong here. Get out of here. We don't want you. And so then the whole Rothschild and the Balfour Agreement, things that you should and can research on your own to understand what I'm referencing, came about, where it was the synthetic modern state of Israel was created by the head Satanists on the planet, aka the Rothschilds, and to create what? A fake Israel, the fake Israel that we see today. So tons of stuff could be said about it. I've already said some stuff about it, and that's not what this video is about. But what I'm talking about is the region, the general area. Okay, if you get too specific, it doesn't work because it becomes oversimplified. And then this little group, and then that little group over there, and this. No, I'm just. If you try to pinpoint it down, it's not exactly the boundaries of the Ashkenazi doesn't exactly conform to what is Ukraine today, does not exactly conform to what is Romania today. It is that general region. That general region, again, not how all the map lines are drawn today, but let's go back before those map lines were so sharply defined. There's something horrible. There is something very dark and very evil. Of course, this is the same region of the Romanian gypsies, which do lots of kind of black magic and cursing and poisoning. And there's a culture of stealing and thieving. And they are, the people in Europe and stuff hate them because they're consistently thieves, and they keep to themselves. They don't integrate wherever they go, and then they do a bunch of organized crime. It used to be just 1700s, right? Pickpockets and things like that. Well, now it's more sophisticated, but I'm talking about the general region because it ties into what God showed me. So there's something horrible in that region. I'm just pointing out that that region gave birth to the fake Jews. That region teamed up with the Rothschilds to make them a synthetic state of Israel that has caused great confusion amongst low information Christians, of which I was one at one point. Has caused great confusion and blurring, and people think that they're Israel when they're not Israel. This has nothing to do with Israel of the Bible. And again, this is a little side note, little free extra credit brownie points you get here. That is not the main point of the video, but I'm talking about this region. It's produced many evil things. So, secondly, let's talk about this region in Ukraine. And I've said it, and other people have said it. And when the United States wants to conduct its biowarfare research, it put a lot of those bioweapons labs underground in Ukraine, so that, if they're caught, if they're found out, if they're discovered, they can have plausible deniability, meaning some people know what that means, some people don't. If you get caught, go, no, that's not the United States doing that. That's something wicked, naughty and bad that Ukraine is doing. That's not us. That's them. You play this political game, this propaganda game, this media game of, no, that's not us. It's them. No, that's not me. So you distance yourself. So you set up your evil operation. It is your evil operation, meaning the deep state in the United States. But it's located not in the United States. It's located over in Ukraine and underground in Ukraine, so that you can pretend and you can lie, and people will be confused and doubt, well, is that really the U.S.? Because it was found over under Ukraine. So there's tons of bioweapons. When I say tons, I mean 1 to 2 dozen. Maybe there's more, but I don't know of more. There's 1 to 2 dozen bioweapons labs. In other words, I haven't seen any proof or anybody talking about it. But at least over a dozen, well over a dozen. And they're really run and they're really funded by the United States, but they're located over in Ukraine. This is a big deal. This explains why when Russia did I think they call it a police action. They have not openly declared war, but they did what was called a police action to move into Ukraine, and they were denazifying Ukraine. And because Ukraine itself is a synthetic state, half of it identifies with Russia as Russian, traditionally Russian, and these situations go back hundreds and hundreds of years. A lot longer than the American consciousness is trained to think in terms of. You've got a whole bunch of it that's really essentially Russian, and then areas of it kind of blur into Poland, and areas of it also then blur over into this Romania thing. So again, just look at the map, look at the different countries that border it. As they're closer to the border of these other nations, they're pretty much that nation. And so you've got different people with different beliefs, different allegiances, different spiritual beliefs, and therefore different political values. You have neo-Nazis with their political values of fascism. You have some hardworking, some plain, some very straightforward, simple, more honest rural people. But you've also got an incredible penchant for evil over there. So specifically Ukraine, you've got really the hubs for organized crime. Yeah, there are Russian mafia, and Russian mafia is completely wicked and evil and dangerous. And there's Ukrainian mafia, and there's all this kind of stuff. But I knew a guy, he was really a shyster of a guy. He was really a con artist. And some people are just gravitate to that. They could work honestly and use their intelligence and their skills and their innovative mindset for good. They could do honest, legitimate business, but for some reason they're just lusting after and attracted to only doing scam businesses, only doing con businesses, only having the appearance of good, and underneath they're taking shortcuts, they're not doing what they say, and blah blah blah. Well, anyway, this guy, again, I'm from Dallas, I'm in Dallas, I'm making this recording from Dallas. He was in Dallas, and he moved over to Ukraine for several months specifically for that purpose. He could live so much less expensively over in Ukraine. But in other words, his shyster nature, he could have gone anywhere on the planet, but where did he go? He went to Ukraine because that scamming nature that shows you one thing and delivers you something else and then makes excuses to weasel out of it. He was great at doing that. He was highly talented and highly skilled in being a con artist. And people like Hillary Clinton and stuff are like, you can try to point out how guilty they are all day long with evidence that should be plenty of evidence, and yet they seem to avoid any significant prosecution. They might get little things that stick to them, but nothing significant. So he moved where? He moved to Ukraine, and he, being a shyster and being, anyway, I don't know how, I think he was late 50s, almost 60, I think, yeah. And they would have huge, massive swinger parties over there. I know there's swinger parties and there's swingers in every city in the U.S., and the bigger the city, the bigger the swinger scene. But I know it exists. I've never, run up into it personally, thank God. But massive swinger parties there, and everybody's just having sex with everyone else's wife, and for them that's cool and entertaining, and it gives them something to do. Well, I'm just saying there are many multiple levels. So when the United States wanted to put their bioweapons lab operations somewhere other than inside the United States in case they got caught and found out, where did they pick? They picked Ukraine because it is a total crime hub. Again, there's this dichotomy. There are honest and hardworking Ukrainians. Now, there's honest and hardworking Americans, and then there are these people that psychopathic, and there's all kinds of different words we can use that you've been hearing lately for years, and deep state and Moloch and Baal worshippers, and all these terms are indeed accurate. So it's just whatever set of terminology you want to use. It all points back to the same thing. You might be talking about these group of people from a more spiritual angle, or from a more political angle, or for a more military angle, whatever. But we have people leading the United States that do not represent the common person. They're con artists, they're scammers, they are liars, they're opportunists, they're thieves. They're evil in such a long list of terms that it'd take an hour just to rattle off the different evil terms that would accurately fit and describe and apply to them. Well, they've got over in Ukraine, and again, of course they have it in Russia and Germany and Austria and Switzerland and all. Yes, they do. And they've got tons of underground stuff in Switzerland. And I'm sure they have it in other places. We just haven't heard about it. I'm talking Europe, and I'm talking more specifically Eastern Europe. But in Ukraine, there's a hub. For some reason, there's a hub. And I'm going to tell you what the reason is in a bit. But the other thing I've been getting just more confirmations of is that if you're familiar with MK Ultra, if you're familiar with mind control, if you're familiar with the ways that mafias work, the way that secret societies work, and so forth, blackmail, extortion, information control, doing evil rituals, many, many, many things. But there's patterns. There's definitely observable and repeatable patterns, things that were happening way back in, when Israel was trying to clean out Canaan. The Hebrew people were trying to clean out all the nasty semi-humans and the giants out of Canaan, and their wicked ways. And it goes back before that. It goes back to Egypt itself. It goes back to Sumeria itself. It goes back to cultures and peoples on this earth before Sumeria. So, yes, it traces back as far as anyone can possibly trace back. Evil has patterns. Evil has patterns, consistent patterns. What's really just changed is our technology today. Maybe our technology is even less. I think there's a good case to be made for that than the ancient technology. But Ukraine has the highest, the perfected, the best sex slaves. So that's one aspect of these secret societies, these occult organizations, from Masons to Luciferians to Druids to, again, Wicca. You can name all of it, to the Brotherhood, to all these terms that you can go and find and research about. This is one of the things that they do. And it can be sex for money. It can be sex for breeding. The super high ups, meaning, high up in their own mindset, not as God would see high up, but as in royals, as in Romanovs, the elite of those that serve Satan. The Romanovs in the Russian thing, the Rothschilds, which are Germans running, Britain and United Kingdom, and so forth. The Queen of England types, the Charles types, all of these things. They're all serving Satan, but one of their aspect is using sex and breeding to preserve bloodlines, which is basically getting high concentrations of the DNA in any given person that's born that was of Cain's, that was most like Cain's DNA. Yes, Cain back from Genesis, because that being called Cain was a mixture of the genes, the human genes from Eve, and the reptilian genes from the Nakash, the serpent, the walking, talking, intelligent, conversational, deceptive serpent. So they want to preserve these genetics, and the whole Hitler's things with the Aryan race all goes back to that same thing. They're trying to preserve corrupted seed and get high concentrations of it, not let it be too there's this fine line they've got to walk. They want a lot of the reptilian seed, non-human genetics, in the operatives that are the human seeming, the human looking people that run systems and nations and World Health Organizations and military generals and stuff all over the world in every significant nation. But if you get a little bit too much, then they can't pull off that, I'm just another human deception. It becomes too obvious. So they're trying to produce this very delicate balance of lots of non-human DNA in somebody, but a person that can still move freely in human society and seems human, that can pull off being a human well enough to fool people. So that's what's going on. But in terms of, so one angle on operation is preserving that serpent seed. It's also using sex for money, making money off of being a pimp or brothels or, now sex that comes to your doorstep. And now you can order this stuff online. So, for example, today on Facebook Marketplace, I saw no less than 4 different ads. This is basically what we call human trafficking. These are ads on Facebook for human trafficking where you can get some Ukrainian girl. And it looks like a teen, bright, eager faces, and is what you actually get the same person in the ad? Probably not, right? Because they're scammers and liars and con artists. That's probably a con too. So they're probably showing you an exceptionally attractive Ukrainian girl, and then what you get is probably less than that. But the point still remains. Why in Dallas, so far away from Ukraine, were there no less than 4 ads specifically for Ukrainian women? Well, Ukrainian women are widely considered, and every kind of nation and ethnicity has its own beauty and its own beauty ideal, and that is beauty. But so there's more than one thing that's beauty, right? But widely, these blonde-haired, blue-eyed Ukrainian women are generally considered the most beautiful. And it again, this is a region, so it blends itself out, right? It blends that. When I say Ukraine, we got to think of the region and more than just the current national boundary known as Ukraine. So that blends out into Romania on one side, it blends out into Russia on the other side, and Poland and Switzerland and so forth, right? So all of that region. But if you wanted to pinpoint the center of the region, that would be in what we call Ukraine today. So generally considered the most. And there are so many drop dead gorgeous women over there that they're treated very badly in general. A Russian woman, there's lots of beautiful Russian women. They're more classy. They treat themselves with dignity. If they're going out and about, even if it's just to buy a loaf of bread, they dress up, they put on a nice dress, their heels, makeup. In other words, they will present, again, not like an LA woman, Los Angeles woman. Yeah, she's dressing up, but in tight yoga pants up the crack of her butt, or a mini skirt with no panties or whatever. Yeah, she's dressing up as well, but it's in a very slutty, whorish way. But the Ukrainian women, yeah, they're definitely making sure you notice their beauty, and they're definitely advertising their beauty, but they're doing it in a classy way. Well, and that's more Russia, and that's largely Ukrainian as well. I dated a Ukrainian for like 6 months. It wasn't serious either. This is a dark hair, brown eyed. But anyway, so they are widely known for the most beautiful women. And again, this is subjective, so people could argue, but by and large. So they're most in demand, that Ukrainian type of beauty. You can see it in the facial structure as well as the hair and eyes, and of course, nicely shaped body, of course. Again, not exclusive to that, but there's so many of them that, like, when you have a glut of something, an overabundance of something, it's not special anymore. It's special to the rest of the world where it's more exotic, more rare, more exceptional, but over there's too many of them, right? You might have a bunch of apple trees and they drop all their apples, and there's no way you can eat that many apples, and so a lot of apples just lie on the ground going to rot, right? So again, there's so many gorgeous women, right? The pimps are all busy. They've got as many girls as they can possibly pimp, and there's still tons of more eligible girls that they would love to pimp. They don't have enough time. There's too many of them. So even though they're, as a general term, exceptionally beautiful and exceptionally sought after, there's just so many of them because of the genetics that you can't. They get treated badly. Like, I can drop you. I can get another girlfriend just as gorgeous as you tomorrow. And these Ukrainian guys take them for granted. When you've got too much of anything, you tend to take it for granted. So that's just human nature. Well, that very much happens over in Ukraine. Again, if you're going to paint me, well, I was there and I didn't see. No, it doesn't always happen 100% everywhere. I'm saying with a broad brush, by and large, that's how it happens. And you've got, of course, lots of talent scouts, lots of modeling agencies. And modeling industry is fickle. It's seasonal. Meaning it rotates around. Maybe one year it's not the Ukrainian woman beauty type that's in vogue. Maybe it's this Asian one, or maybe it's this. But the modeling agencies are searching out more and more rural towns for a woman that still has the appearance of innocence to her. No, she's not jaded, and she's not making herself look aged through smoking too much or whatever. So the modeling agencies want to sell that idea of innocence. Do they care if you're really innocent underneath? No. In fact, a lot of them are basically just human trafficking operations. But they want to present on the surface something innocent, something that still is full of life, a human being, a human vessel that's still full of life, that's attractive, right? And again, literally today, Facebook Marketplace, 4 different ads. I could have scrolled down some more and probably found more of them. But, fresh, eager faces. And there's, dating for men over 40. Well, she's, I don't know, 16, 19, I don't know. 15, I don't know. But it's actively pushed to you. I'm in a bigger city. Dallas is in, I think, the top 10, I'm sure, cities in terms of size in America. And they say it's a big hub for human trafficking. I have not seen it and experienced it myself. Again, there's good and bad places in any city. I know places to go where there's more homeless. I know where places, living in a city long enough, there's places and especially a big city, there's places where you can go if you want to find a prostitute that's literally out walking along the street. There's places you can go for that if that's what you're trying to find. But I think a lot of this human trafficking happens in hotels, happens in nice apartment complexes, and happens in suburbia. In other words, it's more expensive than the prostitute out on the street, so it's hidden from view. It's not happening in an Asian massage parlor, although yes, it is happening, but it's not. Those things are tiny. That's not even the tip of the iceberg. The vast amount of money being made is, let's call it hidden in plain sight. It's that house 5 doors down, that seems like just a regular, it fits in, it blends in. You stand out too much, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to call the attention of the authorities. The authorities, meaning the police and judges and prison system, are probably really all in on it, probably capitalizing on it too. They just don't want public outcry, because once there's enough public outcry, then for optics, for the sake of appearances, they've got to do something about it. They've got to have sting operations. They've got to have roundups. They've got to make arrests. And so they'd rather it not even come up on the people's radar that this is a problem or that's going on in suburbia. Well, there's tons of it going on in suburbia. I haven't run into it, and again, I'm not out there in the nightclub scene, the party scene, the drug scene, this questionable dating scene where you might actually encounter some of this stuff. So, again, larger 2 points. Let's summarize what we've talked about so far. The general region, blurring the national boundary lines of the Ukraine area. There's something horrible under it, and it attracts scammers. It attracts fake. It's where the fake Jews sprang from. It attracts organized crime. There's something about that's a vortex, that's a hub, that's a central point. Again, not the only wicked place. Every place has got its own wickedness. It does. I could talk about Japan. I could talk about Switzerland. I could talk about America. But I'm saying, no, this is a serious area for that. And again, there's this dichotomy. You'll have innocent, hardworking, honest people, just like you've got innocent, hardworking Russians that are probably more moral than you are. And then you'll have complete mafia Russians that have no scruples and will just cut out your kidney and sell it in a heartbeat. So there's all of the above. And of course, this happens in Central America. This happens in Cuba. This happens in Mexico. This happens in Venezuela and Brazil. And it happens everywhere. It happens in South Africa. You know what I'm saying? It happens everywhere. But in terms of perfecting the mind control to get gorgeous women to smile and feel good about selling their bodies, about engaging in sex acts for money and corruption, and it's also for assassination. Get the guy vulnerable in bed and then kill him. Ukraine is a massive center of that. That's what we've covered. And the mind control specifically, there's mind control for many different things, okay? Mind control for assassination, mind control for this, that, and the other thing. But in terms of sexual mind control, to get beautiful young girls to do stuff, and it's every, I keep feeling I have to explain myself. It's every nation. Yes, there's a very high percentage of prostitution in Japan, okay? I'm not discounting. All of these other things are all the slutty culture of America. No, I'm saying the high end, the big money. If you had to make a pie chart, they have capitalized and got the money system down to a science like no place. Even Japan, who has lots and lots of prostitution, and prostitution is generally just accepted and expected in culture. No, it's not down to a science, and it's not like super efficiently money streamlined, and the mind control of the people is not as tight, is not as precise. And of course, Ukraine was chipping its prostitutes, its girl. You think it's just a girl at the bar, but no, she's being controlled and handled, and she has literal chips in herself so that she can be found, and she can't run away. That's the point. She can't run away if she wants to, but she's mind controlled. Besides the other threats of violence or force against her family, or whatever threat, other controlling psychological pressures and physical dangers, mind controlled to do it with a smile and do it well and do it better than the other prostitutes in the other nations. The Ukraine is the number one. Not a pleasant topic to talk about, but Ukraine is number one. Also, there is... So I talked about a little bit of the breeding thing, like the occult bloodlines. Fritz Springmeier brought this to some people's attention within the church with his book on the 13 Illuminati bloodlines. There's lots more than that. There's a lot of hidden bloodlines. There's a lot of bloodlines in Asia that weren't addressed. So, it's way bigger than what that was mentioned, but guess what? Thank goodness for that book, because it was well researched, and it did bring out a lot of facts. DuPont family, Ford family, Reynolds family, and Sinclair, and so many others, Merovingian, okay, on and on and on. But there's so many more than what Fritz knew about or was able to cover. The web is much broader and darker and deeper. There is, in addition to, women being used as sex objects, of course, they're gay, prostitution, of course, there's that. But there's also a form that I just learned about of kind of we talked about the breeding, right? Well, there's breeding programs that go on, again, in plain sight. This guy was telling about, he again, people didn't realize this at first, and only, decades later is he realizing what's been going on. Like, all the people, his testimony is that all the people in my life, they were fake, they were plants. They were all grooming me to be in some dark area of becoming a pimp or working for the Masons, or it's more than one thing, okay? And the edges blur, so you can't just talk about one thing and think, well, he didn't talk about this other thing. No, it does blur into that too, okay? Where women... He's just, a woman that wants to date and have sex with a good-looking girl. And but he realized later a dark pattern, because these occult people, whether they presented themselves on the surface as Masons or just people that wanted to give him the inside track into having good business. He was offered $1 million to become a Mason. And that's just one offer. There's like dozens of different offers. Okay. So that's just one of us, a big thing. Women that he would get with that would become, from a one night stand to a year and a half long dating relationship. There's a pattern that emerged. Okay. So they're having sex. They would get pregnant. Then, for whatever reason, she convinces him that she's got to have an abortion. No, we can't have this child. I've already got another kid. Or what? Again, different excuses from the different women, but the common thing is they get pregnant. They say, I've got to go have an abortion. They go and have a fake abortion, and they try to fool him and pass it off to him that they had an abortion when they didn't have an abortion. They had the baby. A baby, again, could be different stages. There are some Satan groups that testify, they get their breeders pregnant and have the abortion in a few weeks or a month or two. So all different stages because, as we know from the Bible and as God sees it, that is a legitimate human life. Whatever stage it's at, that's just a legitimate human life at the stage it's at. Given the amount of time and nutrition it had at that point in time, given that where it's located inside its mom or outside its mom, that is a legitimate life. The evil is an opportunistic killer. It'll kill a fetus or a 2-year-old or a 27-year-old or your grandmother. Because they're all offerings to Satan. Satan may prefer different specific, no, for this ritual we need a 12-year-old boy. Or a 9-year-old boy or whatever, right? It could be all different kinds of things. But there are some groups that, again, they get their breeders pregnant, they abort it at a very early stage. The woman didn't even show as pregnant. That's what I'm trying to say. And boom, that is offered to Satan as a human sacrifice because guess what? It is a human sacrifice. So it is. They're deliberately impregnated. The baby which is at the fetus stage, is deliberately killed, and that is a full-fledged human sacrifice. There are others who do it different ways. Man, I'm thinking of all the shenanigans and plans and programs and how it works of all the nasty stuff coming across America's southern border because I live in Texas. So there's whole operations there. There's whole operations of getting the girl pregnant before she crosses over into the border. And there's political and financial things like have what's called an anchor baby, and that gets U.S. citizenship. But there's also things, okay, she's pregnant, boom, let's relocate her to this house in El Paso, Texas, and let's have the abortion here so that the human sacrifice can be done on human soil to curse America. There's all kinds of operations like that going on. There's so many different things of evil going on, you could never cover them all. I just don't want Americans to be aware of this, but I'm getting around to the thing that God showed me about Ukraine that explains a lot. So, they've got the most perfected mind control sex slaves. And of course, other people, other nations, other mafia organizations, the triads, the Japanese mafia, things like that they will come to Ukraine to study the most perfected techniques on how to brainwash and mind control people for the purposes, the many different facets of the sex industry. And I didn't quite finish my story. So this guy's seen this pattern. Girls, he gets the girl pregnant. They go and have an abortion, but he's catching on. They didn't really have an abortion. They're acting that they had the abortion. This does not add up. And he finally realized he's being used as a breeder. He had the certain genetics that this cult wanted, and they would send him over the course of years, different women. Again, these were not genuine, authentic attraction situations. The women were professional breeders for the cult. and they would use him to get them pregnant. Again, he's not trying to do anything ritualistic. He's not trying to aid in human sacrifice. He's not trying to be a part of any of this. And yet he was used at least a half a dozen times. So there's breeding that works like that. Okay, this person with this genetics, let's match him up. Let's have him breed. Let's send him over to here. Let's, engineer a situation in which it can seem to him like this was an organic, naturally unfolding chemistry and boyfriend-girlfriend situation. But no. And then after she's had the quote-unquote abortion that wasn't truly abortion, it was a baby, either a fully developed baby or a baby at earlier stages of development, then pretty soon after that, there's some breakup that happens. So again, the breeder has accomplished its mission for the cult, and then it leaves. So that's another aspect of, and I hadn't really thought of that and how that stuff played itself out to this guy's testimony. So I guess it's time to circle around to the main point. The main point is, why is the U.S. throwing ridiculous amounts of money till we basically almost, even though we print money, we print phony baloney money, fiat currency galore, and our government still spends over $2 in debt for every $1 it prints, and it's printing ridiculous amounts of money on top of it. It's all a scam. They're all playing games. The IRS wants to come in and micromanage you while massive amounts of money are going to organized crime. So they're going to developing tunnels. They're going to all kind of black projects. They're going to breeding werewolves. Yeah, literal werewolves, not werewolves that transform under the full moon. Not that part of the story, but a creature that in all regards is that werewolf creature. Yeah, money's going for that program. There are so many programs. It's every time you think you know how big and bad it is, no, it's bigger and badder and worse and more evil. God is aware of all this. God is going to be exposing this, because as judgment on America becomes more and more obvious, where even the most stupid or hard-headed person cannot deny that America is being judged. It's more than famine. It's more than economic collapse. It's more than this, that, the loss of freedoms. It's more than, it's become so extreme. God is exposing all the evils that are going on, so people have to admit God is right for judging America. God is right. And I'm here in Dallas. I haven't seen that there's this human trafficking going on. I haven't run into that. I haven't interfaced with circles. But guess what? This guy testified that there was these honeypots, honey traps coming to them that he thought in his mind were legitimate boyfriend-girlfriend situations. No, they were a situationship. They were a breeder coming to him specifically to trick him into getting them pregnant so that they could have a baby for cult purposes. So there's things going on that it's completely controlled by the occult, but you don't see it. Like, I'm sure that there are deals as to who wins the Super Bowl that are made behind closed doors, but I don't participate in it, but we all, meaning most Americans, America by and large is all for the Super Bowl, thinks it's great, highly entertaining, watching the Super Bowl. We get all engaged in which team wins and which team doesn't win. Yeah, I've extracted myself from all those institutions, all those situations. But America by and large is very much pro Super Bowl. That's a great thing. That's an exciting thing. I want to know who wins. I've got money on this team or whatever it is. Yet it's all controlled. Once you get a bunch of money involved, it's all controlled. A boxing match, anything. I had a guy who worked, a blue collar worker, and he was a part of a union, and the union had amassed a large pile of money for all the pensions, because being in the union and paying all your union dues, one thing you get is a pension when you retire. And of course, there are police pensions and all this stuff. Well, once there's any large pile of money, an evil con artist, scammer, controller, a wicked person is going to come in and steal that money. Now, at the top of the game of stealing large piles of money are our own congressmen, our own presidents, right? Our own military generals. They're the ones who are playing that game at the largest levels on planet Earth. I'm talking about literal money. There's other people, but the cults that are involved in the scam of stealing life force. So, all right, let's get into it. Why is the U.S. throwing ridiculous amounts of money at Ukraine, over $100 billion, and with ever demands more? Why does Zelensky feel so righteous, so entitled, so obnoxiously demanding, flying his little ass over here to the U.S., getting in our president's face and go, you damn it, you better give me money? Well, there's a few surface reasons, such as like, hey, public opinion is going to turn against this war if American soldiers start dying. So you better give me money so that I can have mercenaries, so I can have sheep dip soldiers, so that I can have our people dying in this contrived and staged war, because it's scripted. It's not going exactly to script, but it was scripted. Instead of American lives. So you're paying for us to die rather than Americans to die. That's a level. That's a mostly true level. There's a few little twists and turns where even that is not as how it seems. But yeah, we better do this so that they can stop Russia and so Russia can't expand. Yeah, there's an element of truth to that. It's that way at one level. Like just as like the International Space Station or Antarctica. Like, again, we might be at war with this country and that. Yet we're playing well alongside each other in the International Space Station. We're playing well alongside of each other, literally alongside of each other, literally at arm's length from each other in the research base in Antarctica. Why? Because underneath it all, these people have their quote-unquote religion, ancient satanic religions, are about using the technology of the ancient ones, getting technology from fallen angels. The same thing that was going on in Genesis 6 days of the Nephilim, of the Watchers, of the breed out the human programs that were underway. Dilute and destroy all human genetics. Take over, compromise, degrade, take over so that there's no more actual humans left. There are only hybrids and giants and other abominations on earth because they hate God and they want to give God the middle finger. And so they're shitting on his creation in the most vile, the most direct, the most obnoxious, the most heinous way possible. And that is you've ruined it from the core, I mean, if my hands get dirty, I can wash my hands off. But if my hands get ground up in a blender, you can't wash that off. The hand is ruined. So they're ruining humanity so that what God loves, the humans made in his own image, is literally ruined, is literally corrupted, is degraded so that it no longer is what it was. It's not just tainted and needs to be detoxed. No, it's ruined. That's what evil wants to do. They hate Earth. They hate humans, and yet they're in desperate need for the life that's on Earth. So it's a love-hate relationship with hate winning out. Aliens are not your friends. They're your frenemies. They might, as mind control games, as a psyop game, as a propaganda game, they might play, we're friends and beneficial, but they're really out to devour, to steal, kill, and destroy, as Jesus already told us. And you can see that played out in various works of science fiction, which are, and television shows. The Colony, for example, is a good one. V, and there's 2 different shows made that are just called V for visitors. They show that well. They play the we're here to help role, but really they're engineering the total destruction of Earth. So you see that theme over and over again. Why? Because it's actually going on. Not exactly like it is in that movie or in that TV show or whatever, but that's going on. So why is the U.S. giving our money? Is it just so that American lives don't have to die? Why does Z feel so entitled to demand? He's not politely asking. He's not begging, oh, please help, we're under attack. He has turned into a freaking tyrant. I go, no, you will give me this much. You will give me this many tanks. You will give me this many planes. Or I'm going to fucking expose what you're doing. Because Z has been installed. Right? There was a forced regime change by our CIA, which is expert at doing this. We're not the only ones who do this, but we're the world's experts at it, at installing our own puppets in different lands. Z was that puppet. He was there to quarterback the evils going on under Ukraine, bioweapons labs. But you know what? A lot of those bioweapons labs have been taken out in Russia very early on in their police action against Ukraine. That was one of their top priorities. We see the specific locations that Russia first struck in Ukraine way back at the beginning of this Russian-Ukraine conflict. We'll just call it a conflict. Were the locations of these bioweapons labs, because that was a huge threat to humanity at large, to the world at large, but also directly to Russia. It's on Russia's doorstep, after all. So there's that going on. Is that the reason? No. It is, but it's a smaller piece of a bigger picture. Here's the reason. They're underground fallen angels. Not just giants, not just Nephilim, but fallen angels themselves under Ukraine. This, for whatever ancient evil happened there, whatever really ancient abomination, atrocity, bloodletting situation went on there, these angels are fallen angels. Actual fallen angels, not fallen angel plus man creating a Nephilim. So fallen plus man, no. Full-on fallen angels under the Ukraine. That is what God said. God did not speak it in this word sentence. He showed me in feelings, in impressions, in visual imagery. But that's what God showed me. He did not say it audibly. He did not say it in English language words. That's what's there. That is what cannot be allowed to be exposed at any and all costs. This is why Zelensky knows this. Zelensky has got the U.S. by the balls because they know they cannot afford, they cannot let that get exposed. They cannot, or let Russia somehow get their hands on it. Where these fallen angels, which, and again, it's a matter of time. The angel is either in stasis, the angel is either in chains, the angel is either awake and conscious but can't move or get out. And I don't understand how all that works, because this is a spiritual being, but yet it does have physical form. Now, some ancient books of antiquity would say, speaking back to the initial incursion of the Watchers that came on Mount Hermon, that had 200 leaders, lieutenants, generals, whatever the specific term is, leaders over angels underneath them that fell and came to earth to impregnate human women, which actually weren't human women. I should correct myself. They were Cain's women. So they were semi-human women. They were already human/reptilian hybrids. In other words, Cain's lineage. In other words, serpent seed. The fallen angels wanted to breed with them. They were master seductresses. So, if you're online at all in this day and age, you see so many women out there, flashing their boobs and butt and assets and being provocative in ways that would have gotten you thrown in jail just 20, 25 years ago. And the grooming of our society to become a pornographic society, to become a degraded society, where that's headed is we're going to become transhuman friendly. We're going to become bestiality friendly. We're going to become necrophilia friendly. We're going to become cannibalism friendly. We're going to become, voodoo, zombie, witchcraft friendly. There is no limit to the evil. Again, once you stray from God, you don't have protection from evil. Evil will take you over. It'll take your mind over. So, we see a very, I'm just going to call it slutty and pornographic culture in America. And it's so in our faces. And it was there all along. But again, the minority becomes the majority, becomes normalized. So the corruption has gone. I mean, Russians wanted to corrupt the United States. They wanted to make us lose our moral foundations that made us strong, that made us united, and made us hardworking for a cause, for things that we believed in as good. And America would read the Bible. Was everybody truly on the inside, heart of hearts, a dedicated disciple of Jesus? Probably not. Probably not. But they knew their Bible. They went to church. They had much more moral lives than most Christians today because of the influence of the culture. And we could get off into the history of that, but we're not going to. Everything's interconnected. Why it's so hard to stay on just one topic. There is fallen angels under the Ukraine. That's the thesis of this presentation, folks. This is the horror that is so horrible that they cannot let at any cost, I repeat, at any cost, allow this to come out. The biolabs, they first denied the biolabs, then they admitted the biolabs, as they do. This is dragon speak. This is dragon propaganda techniques, cultural subversion techniques 101. Now let me finish my other point that I started to make and then got off track. Russia is out to subvert us, to take away our moral foundation. The depths at which America has fallen to is far beyond the worst that Russia planned to do to our culture. Russia wanted to make us no longer a godly people so that they would have the moral high ground in attacking us and destroying us. And it's gone way beyond their worst. In other words, you could say they succeeded. That's a word you could use from their perspective. They succeeded at undoing the moral foundations of America. And again, it's not just them. It's witches. It's a bunch of different stuff, okay? But it's gotten way more horrible, way more degenerate than even they, with their very cool Russian mafia, would have ever guessed. We have fallen further and faster than they could have ever imagined. They're now horrified by what they see in America. They may be mafia people, but now they are turning up their nose in disgust of the American culture. But again, it's not about what Russian Putin or Russian mafia or Zelensky thinks about America. Zelensky knows that we have a dark and terrible secret, which at first I thought was the bioweapons labs, and that's it, but it goes way deeper. We're not just stealing tons of Americans' tax dollars to fund developing molecules, developing organisms that are designed to kill billions of humans. I mean, that's beyond a James Bond villain right there. Right? Beyond what we would even envision in our most cartoonish, most exaggerated, most caricatured evil villain. Fallen angels. And again, it's not just there. The Bible tells us that there's angels, constrained, confined in the underneath the Tigris Euphrates, right? The area of ancient Sumeria. And the wickedness and the horrors they were doing there. But this is the key piece of information that locks, that makes all of our behaviors that we know about in the news make total and perfect sense. They do not want either Russia to get access to these angels. Now, I don't think you can control a fallen angel. In fact, I know you can't, but maybe you can keep them contained. I know from testimony of people in secret societies, and different ones are they're in touch with different fallen beings. Okay, all these ancient secret societies that are still very much in operation today. It's just which different evil being or fallen angel are they serving? And if you go to Japan, it's going to be a different one than if you go to America. But it's a different one in the general Ukraine region, the general Ukraine territory. Again, it blurs over into Russia, blurs over into Poland, blurs over into Romania, and so forth. But maybe, so in this particular Illuminati bloodline, they would meet with literal dragons, and they would drink dragon's blood, which was this black goo mixture. And don't pigeonhole things too much. Don't think in too simplistic of terms. There are many different forms of black goo, but this was one of them. So they would drink literal dragon. I'm saying through blood rituals, you could get an ancient dragon, which might be the same thing as saying a fallen seraphim, and I think it is the same thing as saying a fallen seraphim class of angel, and drink its literal blood to get it to literally manifest physically in the 3D world, and drink its actual blood. And you're putting dragon blood into you. You're putting fallen seraphim blood into you. You're making a pact, an agreement, an alignment, a covenant with evil, with hatred of God, with rebellion against God, with hatred of humanity so deep inside of you, embedded into you. That's what this Illuminati bloodline was doing. And again, each bloodline, each that's trickled out from Cain, the original rebel and murderer that had humanity mixed into it, has its own thing, its own method, its own thing it specializes in. There is fallen angels under Ukraine. This is the secret they cannot let the world know about. This is the thing. If it gets out, there is no way. You cannot go back. There is no way to cover it up. There is no way to hide it. And if that comes out, then all the rest of the dark secrets come out. But guess what? But of all the dark secrets, this is the secret that can't come out. So maybe they're able to keep these things in stasis. God has an appointed time for them to wake up and emerge. They are held in chains, in bondage, in confinement. People have reported encountering fallen angels and literally being wrapped in chains, like chains the size of like a boat anchor chain on a battleship. Like you could not lift one link of those chains, right? I mean, that's about, to lift one link of those chains is probably heavier than a Volkswagen car. Chains like that. So whatever confinement, they might just be confined in super dense rock and miles of super dense rock. I don't know. God didn't tell me the details of how they're confined. Because look, a bioweapons lab, as evil as it is, yeah, it's super evil. It can kill more people than your nuclear bomb. So yeah, on the scale of evil, it's right there at the freaking top. The most dangerous of all things you could be doing. No, this dwarfs it. This is the deep dark secret. This is why they will throw billions of our dollars. They will throw every dollar that they can. And again, there's money laundering going on. It comes back to the politicians that give us our money. They take our money, give it to this evil, wicked Zelensky puppet. Zelensky does horrible things with it. Zelensky gives a slice of that money back to the politicians. And again, the news will tell us it's all for this wonderful cause. We have to protect the borders of Ukraine. Why? Why at such a high cost? Why at such a ridiculous, and they get in their speeches in their United Nations and their little groups and their G20s and their G whatevers and say, the Ukraine must be protected at all costs. We stand with Ukraine. And again, this situation came about before what we're now in April, as the Israel-Iran situation. And I'm not going to get into that. And that's, of course, rapidly developing, you could say, or collapsing, you could say. Same thing. It's turning into a mess. This is what they've tried their damnedest for so long, for these years that the Ukraine war has been going on, for the Russian conflict has been going on, with the COVID thing where we have to shut everybody down and not let people travel. It all goes together. There's something so dark and horrific that people do not have the mental category to even envision it. It's worse than a bioweapon. And they will do anything to not let Russia get a hold of it. They will do anything to not let the world consciousness know that such a thing even exists. Therefore, it'll become about all this other stuff. It'll become about human trafficking. It'll become about denazifying. Yeah, these are true things, but they're not the real thing. They're not the core thing. They're not the actual core reason. We've had neo-Nazis there ever since the 40s. So why now must it be denazified? Well, you're encroaching and putting your missiles too close to my borders. That's true, but it's not the core reason of all. And I'm taking you to the core piece of information, not because I'm smart, but because God told me. Exactly when these angels, these fallen angels are activated, exactly what devastation and death and evils they unleash upon the world, I don't know. It's going to be bad. They're probably talked about in the book of Revelation. The scroll, I'm sure. Are they the ones that help kill a third of mankind? Are they? I don't know. I just know this. Under the Ukraine, their deepest, darkest secret, the main thing they don't want you to know, I know I'm repeating myself, but I'm trying to say it 10 times to help it sink in, is fallen angels, plural, that are so powerful, so evil, so deadly. It's not a demon, folks. It's not a demon. As hateful as that can be, it's a whole other level. It's a whole other level, a lot closer to Satan himself, that God has prevented from doing their evils upon the earth. And at some point, they will be released, and God controls it. And this is why mankind and all their technology, they're not fully controlling it. Otherwise, maybe they would have released it. Otherwise, they might trying to be talking to it. Otherwise, they might be trying to make deals with it. Is this thing awake? Are they in communication with it? My curiosity would love to know these details, because God says, no, it's not important for you to know. I'm telling you this, and the information stops there. That's what's under Ukraine. That is why the nations of the United States and the rest of Europe is desperate, is panicked to not let this fact come out. Again, there are plenty of other fallen angels located and imprisoned in other parts of the planet. And I don't have information on them other than the one the Bible talks about, which everybody knows or should know, Tigris-Euphrates River area. But there's another handful, cluster. Is it 3? Is it 5? Is it 12? Is it 2,000? I think it's a small cluster. That's what I feel. It's a handful. If I had to put money on it, so to speak. But the danger level to the planet is off the charts. I just wanted you to know what God told me, that this is why. This explains all their behavior. They'll make all the excuses. They'll come up with all the narratives, all the rationalizations in the world to help you chip in your money, or to not fight against your money being stolen from you is a better way to say it, and put toward this cause of we must keep this under wraps. That's really what I had to say. Take all these things to God. Pray for yourself. Use discernment. We need wisdom from God. We need understanding. We need discernment. Take it. Use it. but now you know their deepest, darkest secret. May God bless you. May you strengthen yourself in the Lord. May you stay so close to God you are under the shelter of his wings, because we're going to need divine protection on a daily basis to not be exterminated. You got to strengthen yourself now, psychologically, spiritually, provisions. You're going to need every bit of it. Only God. And even all that stuff, the physical stuff of survival, that won't save you. Only God's intervention directly into your life will save you from stuff like this. May God bless you. May God lead you into more closeness, union, harmony, a loving relationship with Father himself. God bless you in Jesus' name.